What's up everyone, it's Brian from Exact IT and Cybersecurity. Welcome back to the channel where we're going to break down the latest in cybersecurity threats, trends, and how you can protect yourself and your business in today's video. So we're going to talk about the best ways to prevent cyber attacks. And this is a common question that I get all the time from people who run businesses, and they always want to know, like, Brian, what are the best ways to prevent all these cyber attacks? There's no easy answer to that question, but I'm going to try to help you understand all the things that are involved with cybersecurity at a macro level and get into the micro a little bit, because each threat has its own unique way that you can be attacked. And remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when we put out more content like this around cybersecurity. I thank you for your support, and let's get into the content for today. Cyber attacks are malicious attempts by hackers to damage or disrupt or steal data from computer systems, a network, or a device. These types of attacks impact individuals and businesses. They can lead to things that are called data breaches. They can lead to financial loss. They can lead to identity theft through these data breaches on individuals. And mainly they can disrupt critical operations, and that's what a lot of cyber criminals bank on, and how they're making money today, and really why they're motivated to hack companies and individuals. Cyber criminals don't really care who they target if they feel like they can make money off of you. If you're a celebrity, there's a good chance that you might be targeted as an individual, just like a business would, because they assume that you have the ways, means, and resources to pay them should they exploit you and take something that you value away, which is ultimately what these cyber criminals do. They find something that you value. A business is their operations and how they make money, and they put an absolute halt to that and control it and take over it, and they don't give it back to you until you pay them their ransom or you recover from your own methods, because you put cyber resiliency at the forefront of your business and you were able to recover without paying the ransom. While that does occur in today's world, it's rare, and a lot of businesses end up paying millions of dollars in ransoms to cyber criminals around the world as a result of these activities. The stakes are high because we've all heard about these high-profile cases that involve things like ransomware. We've heard major hospitals, major companies. Car dealer recently was hit that shut down the operations of tens of thousands of car dealers around the country. We've seen all different kinds of organizations that have been taken offline due to cyber attacks, and it can cause huge disruptions and even put lives at risk. That's what's at stake. So the most popular one, the most sensationalized one that we have out there now is ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts your data and demands a ransomware payment to restore access. There's different flavors of ransomware today. There's even ransomware that has double extortion. Usually involves the exfiltration of data and then the threat to release that data publicly. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the organization that you're dealing with, the leadership, and their attitude towards these things. And I mention that because we see with the city of Columbus that their mayor absolutely refuses to negotiate or deal with these criminals in any way. And as a result, there's all kinds of things happening with their ransomware event, including the release of data. This city in the United States is being steadfast in its commitment to not paying the ransom, but there's all kinds of interesting repercussions that are coming about as a result of the decisions that are being made. And you could argue whether they're right or wrong, but it's an interesting and dynamic situation occurring over in Columbus around their ransomware event. There's also a well-known ransomware attack that happened many, many years ago known as WannaCry, which impacted businesses and hospitals worldwide. It locked users out of their systems unless they paid the ransom. WannaCry was one of the first ransomware events that we really heard on a widespread level that really impacted businesses and took them down for significant periods of time, to where it impacted operations, and large international news organizations started to pick up on this ransomware threat. One of the major threats to businesses is phishing. Phishing attacks trick users into providing sensitive information, often through fake emails and websites. These attacks usually come in the form of emails that look like they're from a reputable source like your bank or Microsoft or Apple or Adobe. It could come from even somebody you work with, your boss or colleague. There's all different kinds of ways that cyber criminals are working and researching and using social engineering techniques to ask you for your login details or to get you to click on some kind of link that probably has something really bad waiting for you on the other side, like ransomware or password stealing or some kind of malware. There's always some kind of scam on the other side of these phishing links, so it's a really good idea to get yourself aware about what these phishing emails are doing, how they evolve over time. It's important that you stay up to date on these things so you can combat them. This is something that we also refer to in cybersecurity as a human layer issue, meaning these phishing emails come into humans for the most part. Now, while we can have things like filters in place that try to prevent this stuff from getting through, these guys are working 24/7 around the clock trying to beat these filters, beat these tools that cyber defenders put in place so these emails get through to your users. And when they do, which ultimately they will, none of these systems that filter out these emails are foolproof or perfect, and they can't keep up with the ever-changing tactics that these spammers and phishing people use. So what ends up happening is they change up their strategies, their techniques, they beat the filters, they end up in your employees' inboxes, and that's the layer that you need to train your employees on and make sure that they understand what a legitimate email looks like over a phishing email, and they don't fall victim to something like a phishing attack. Distributed denials of service attack. And what these attacks do are flood systems or flood an IP address with so much traffic that the system can no longer handle all the requests, and it overloads the system, which the end result to the people trying to access the system means that they can't get to whatever it is that that system is providing. We'll take a basic example like a website. A website is always out there for people to access. And if I go and program a bunch of computers around the internet to flood my web server with traffic, that means when you try to visit my website, you're not going to be able to pull up the web page because it's not going to be able to handle your request. It means that there's too many cars trying to enter the parking lot and you're not getting in, and you just kind of have to wait for all that traffic to filter through and get through those toll booths or get through those gate checkers, and then eventually you might get in. And that's essentially what a DDoS attack does. And you can do that with all kinds of devices, all these little IoT devices, cameras, thermometers, all these things that are connected to the internet today can all be used in these DDoS type of attacks, because really all you need them to do is be on the internet and able to communicate, or be on the network and be able to communicate, and you can turn these devices into a DDoS agent to help you perform this type of attack. So large websites, large organizations have been brought down by DDoS attacks, causing hours and hours of downtime and actually huge financial losses. Malware is another malicious problem for businesses. I would say ransomware is malware, but not all malware is ransomware. There's other malware out there that does things that are designed to disrupt, damage, or gain unauthorized access to a computer system. Viruses, worms, spyware, all types of malware. This stuff was really popular before ransomware came out. Ransomware kind of took over, and we don't see as much malware as we used to see back in the day, because malware back before ransomware, there was really no mechanism for them to make money. It was just almost like digital graffiti. Some malware is used for malicious purposes and is used for the purpose of causing harm to an organization. But unlike ransomware, there's really no means to an end, meaning there's no way to make money off of malware. It's used for other purposes like gaining access, stealing information, things like that. A man-in-the-middle attack is when an attacker intercepts communication between two parties without their knowledge. So think about unsecured public Wi-Fi networks in places like coffee shops and airports, where hackers can steal this sensitive data from users browsing or entering login information. You could be sitting in a coffee shop, and if somebody has one of these attacks running, they can basically steal all the information going from your phone through that wireless network to wherever else it's going, and they're intercepting all of that. I have been involved in situations where hotels have had logins for certain things, and those logins have not been encrypted, meaning that your username and password is sent over in clear text. And if somebody else is sitting in that hotel and has successfully set up a man-in-the-middle type of attack, well, they can steal all that information right off of your computer. The other thing they can steal is something called a session token. And this is a big deal because session tokens can be used to log into M365 or Google. When you successfully log into a service like your Gmail or your M365 email account, and it asks you, hey, do you want to save this password? And you check that little box, say, yeah, I want to trust this device. I want to save this. It puts a little token out there and it sends it through the internet, puts it on your computer. So the next time your computer fires up and you want to log in, it says, oh, well, this is Brian, and I don't need to authenticate him with MFA or username and password again, like the company has set policy for if this were a new login. But because they say we allow trusted logins and I trusted this device before, I'm going to let Brian just walk right in. Funny thing is we can steal that token off of your device, and you can steal a token in a man-in-the-middle attack if that token is transmitted over that network that this man-in-the-middle attack is being run on. If you're in a hotel and you log into M365 and somebody has a man-in-the-middle attack going, there's a pretty good chance that they can steal your Microsoft token, put it on their computer, and then do what's called an impersonation, and then Microsoft thinks it's your computer when it's really the hacker's computer. Interesting one there. We actually see this one a lot. It's a very common way for businesses to experience what's known as business email compromise. A SQL injection simply involves inserting malicious code into a web form. So when you go to a web form and see like your name, your address, and you fill that in when you buy something. Well, hackers or even ethical hackers can go to those web forms and input computer code or source code into those fields. Sometimes if you put in the right code, you can actually manipulate or take control of the database on the back end and get unauthorized access to these systems. You definitely don't want that happening. So you want to make sure that your systems, your websites, anything you're putting out there that has these fields are tested for things like SQL injections, and you want to make sure that that does not exist. Many websites out there fall victim to SQL injections. It's actually probably one of the most common things that these hackers that look for these things, known as threat hunters or bug bounty hunters, what they find when companies don't properly secure their databases. You hope the good guys find it first, but if the bad guys find it first, this allows hackers to steal things like personal information, financial information, health information. This is the main way that data breaches occur. SQL injections, and there's other types of code injections that exist. And when you hear companies like Snowflake get hacked, you could pretty much bet that it was something like a SQL injection that got them. A zero-day exploit targets a vulnerability in software that developers are unaware of or haven't patched yet. Hackers, typically state-sponsored ones, use these zero-day exploits to break into systems before company even knows there's a problem, and it gives hackers a huge advantage when it comes to hacking. Zero-day exploits are a real problem for organizations and should be a massive concern, because if you don't know about a vulnerability, you're not going to fix it. You, the organization, the manufacturer of the software or hardware that needs to patch it, they're probably completely unaware, assuming that they're handling their incident reporting correctly and their bug bounty reporting correctly, that they're handling these things professionally and the right way, and they're not just sitting on the information, which is a thing. Zero-day exploits are a big problem for organizations because there are hacking groups out there who are building massive libraries of these 0 days. They're testing Windows, they're testing testing Mac OS, they're testing Linux, they're testing all these popular software applications, and they're building a library of these zero-day exploits for their own knowledge and resources. So when they decide that they want to go out on a hacking campaign, they start using all these unknown vulnerabilities in their efforts to try to hack companies, governments, organizations. Zero-day exploits are a big problem. It's why you need to patch as soon as a patch becomes available when these manufacturers put these things out. But it's also a reason to look at other solutions to deal with this problem, like zero trust and other security methods that help prevent and mitigate against zero-day type of exploits. These cross-site scripting hacks allow hackers to inject malicious scripts like code into websites that run browsers of unsuspecting users. You can steal things like session cookies. I kind of mentioned that with the token thing earlier. Same idea, but you're basically stealing session cookies to trick a web server into thinking you're somebody you're not, or authenticated and you're not. And then this affects your use of that website on whether you're trusted or not. If these cross-site scripting attacks are successful, it makes it really hard for the web server to determine whether or not this person's logged in or they are authenticated, and the hackers take advantage of that, and then they can overtake the server. They can do all kinds of nasty things similar to SQL injection. So I'm not going to go over all the details in there because I already went over the idea in the SQL injection section that I went on a few minutes ago, but it's a similar idea. You're just basically using a web browser instead of how I mentioned you use the form fields on a website for a SQL injection. This is essentially just using the address bar in your browser and manipulating the code that the website displays to you in the browser. You manipulate that code and you take advantage of the server through that. You probably are running your own website. If you're not, I would check with your third-party host or provider. Make sure that they're protecting you against cross-site scripting. Brute force attacks, an attacker uses automated tools to guess your password. It's probably one of the most caveman-like ways to break into a system at times, but it's also very surgical because a lot of times cyber criminals, like in the Colonial Pipeline attack, which was a big one, they have the information that they found either on the dark web or some other compromised way by sending your employees a phishing email, and then they thought they were logging into Microsoft, but they were really giving that information to a hacker who set up a web server that displayed a web page that looked like a Microsoft login, and they tricked your employees, and that's how they got those credentials. There's a lot of different ways that brute force attacks can go down. Another common way is hackers just buying databases off of the dark web and running them through a software program that just tries thousands and thousands of different combinations of usernames and passwords to see if they can break into your system. These attacks are especially dangerous if you use weak passwords, you don't use a password manager in your organization, you're not monitoring the dark web for compromised credentials. There's a lot of different things you can do to protect yourself here, but if you're not doing anything, you're leaving yourself massively exposed, and this could be a huge risk to your business. Social engineering is attacks to manipulate people into giving away confidential information. And this can be used by hackers collecting information out on the internet through your company website, through social media. A hacker may pose as a tech support person or a trusted colleague, asking for login credentials or access to your system. The more information you have on the web or on social media about you, your company, roles that people have, names, what positions they're in, you make it easier for hackers to pose as one of these tech support or employees, because if they have a lot of information about your employee, then that builds a level of trust, and they know that if they can build a level of trust with your employee and make them think that this person's really from tech support, the chances of their attack succeeding increase significantly. Drive-by downloads are simply malicious software that automatically downloads to your device without your consent just by visiting a compromised website. And it happens to legitimate websites through things like what I mentioned earlier, SQL injections, cross-site scripting attacks, where hackers are able to load malware onto these web servers, so when unsuspecting visitors come and visit these legitimate websites, they get hit with these drive-by downloads which contain malware. Another way is through hacker websites that are set up by hackers, meaning they send your employees a phishing email and that email contains a malicious link. They click on it. It looks like it goes to some company's website, but there's one little letter or number that is changed that they didn't pick up on. Click on it, go to this website, and that website has a drive-by download or malicious file that the user unsuspectingly downloads, and now they have malware on their system. An insider threat is an attack that comes from someone within the organization who has access to sensitive information. This could be a disgruntled employee leaking sensitive information or working with external hackers to sabotage the company. We see this when employees think they're going to be fired or they're exiting a company. We also see employees stealing data to go start their own company or take it to their next job to get a competitive advantage. There's a lot of different ways that insider threats can go down. We've seen IT professionals take down entire servers and data centers because they're disgruntled about their job or about the fact that they're losing their job. But insider threats can be both malicious and not malicious. Somebody can do something where they were not intending to do it on purpose, but the result of their action caused a problem. Meaning somebody decided to dispose of a laptop and throw it in their trash can instead of properly disposing it through IT and getting it destroyed and shredded. And then somebody came along, found that laptop, opened it up, fired it up, logged into it, got all kinds of company information, or pulled the hard drive out. And because the drive wasn't encrypted, they were able to get to sensitive information that way. We've seen these types of attacks occur to companies. That's why I mention them, so you're aware of how all these different attacks can go down against your company, organization, or you as an individual. So I'm going to briefly talk about why cyber criminals and why people use cyber attacks and what's their motive behind using them. Well, the number one reason that most cyber criminals operate is pretty straightforward when you think about things like ransomware and business email compromise, and that's financial gain. The most common motivation is money. Stealing credit card details is another popular way that cyber criminals steal from others. Draining bank accounts through things like business email compromise and other misdirection of funds. Cyber criminals are after financial reward for the most part, and where that money goes and how that money is used after they steal it from companies and individuals, that's probably another video for another day, but I can tell you it doesn't go to much of anything good or positive in the world. Another big reason cyber criminals attack companies and individuals is for spying purposes, to get information or espionage. They're often used in corporate or state level espionage attacks to steal trade secrets, government information, proprietary information. It's a very common thing. It's a very hot market in certain industries like the pharmaceutical world for organizations to be exploited or to have their information stolen and resold on the dark web to other people for other purposes. We also see cyber criminals being hired by nations to help and support their nation state hacking activities to spy on companies. If they can use private hackers and private individuals to break into companies and they're successful, well, these nation state hackers and nation state backed groups that do this stuff will certainly jump on the bandwagon of any private cyber criminal who can get access to something that they want. So you have to be aware that not only do you have organizations out there doing this, but you have organizations working together to try to get this information from you. Other reason that hackers attack is for ideology or revenge purposes. Known as hacktivists or disgruntled employees might launch attacks to make political statements or sabotage businesses. We see this a lot. We saw the war break out between UKR and Russia. You definitely saw hacktivists go to work, and there were people hacking Russians and there were people hacking UKR properties. This happens when people go to war. This happens all the time. People use hacking to make political statements or sabotage businesses. And then the last one is sabotage. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a reason. It could be just to cause what's known as digital graffiti, as I mentioned earlier in the video, or just to annoy people or cause harm or disrupt, shut down websites, damage reputations. Really, this is like you look around and you see some cyber attacks and you're like, why did they do this? Well, this is the reason. There's no real financial gain. There's no espionage. Nobody's really stealing. They just kind of did it because they could. Those are what we consider sabotage types events where there's real no financial gain. There's no real winners or losers other than the business being down and attacked. And that's sabotage. That's what can happen. And there are some cyber criminals who absolutely engage in sabotage types of attacks where that's the only thing that happens. Some kind of negative disruption to an operation, a shutdown website, or a damaged reputation. Let's talk about some ways that we can stop all these different attacks. Talking about the number one thing here at a macro level, update your software regularly. Manufacturers of software put out updates or patches that typically either make the software function better or make it more secure. And typically in today's day and age, we see these patches come out to fix security vulnerabilities that cyber criminals are using to exploit companies. When you don't apply these patches, when you don't put a strategy around updating software, it leaves your business and your systems open to not only unknown exploits, but also known exploits. The problem and the complexity that this presents to your business is when it becomes a known exploit, the good guys and the bad guys know about it. And as soon as something is known, the bad guys are out there looking to build tools, to build automations, to look for ways to use computers to automatically scan for this stuff so they can quickly act on it and hack your company. So if you have software out there or you have hardware out there that's not updated, that's really old, know that there are computers and bots and machines out there that are working around the clock 24/7 looking for these things. It's not like some human being has to get lucky and stumble upon it. They have computers out there that are running that flag them and say, hey, I found something over here. You might want to take a deeper look at this. And then that's when the human beings and the really smart hackers go to work and get into your network and take advantage of it, ultimately leading to things like a ransomware attack. The next thing you want to make sure you're doing at a macro level is using strong and unique passwords. Man, if I had $1 for every friend that has posted, hey, don't respond to that message, my Facebook account has been hacked or this has been hacked, really tells you that you're not using strong or unique passwords. A lot of times these social media accounts get hacked because somebody's using a close variant to something that's already been exposed, or they're just using things that are too easy to guess for cyber criminals. I mentioned those brute force attacks earlier where they use software programs to get into your network and do all these things. Well, if you're using your dog's first name and some numbers, probably a good chance that that brute force software can probably guess that password in probably less than, I don't know, a half a day. Depending on how you have things set up and what they're getting into, they could be in your account without even knowing your username and password right now, and in 5 hours, 6 hours be in your account by just using a software that guesses passwords. So using strong and unique passwords not only helps prevent against brute force types of attacks, but it also prevents when another organization or another website gets hacked. This is a big one that happened was LinkedIn. LinkedIn was hacked and all the usernames and passwords for LinkedIn ended up on the dark web, and a lot of people's legitimate passwords that they use for a lot of different things were exposed as a result of LinkedIn. And it was one of the first hacks that I can remember where we were able to go to it, pull somebody's email address and show them a password, and they'd be like, oh my God, that's my password. It took a long time for people to realize that this password on LinkedIn, this breach, exposed a lot of their passwords, and people were using same or similar passwords at a very high rate back when LinkedIn got hacked. I would say that if it happened today, I'd feel a little bit better about the situation, but we still know that companies and individuals are not using and creating passwords the way that they should based on how cyber criminals are able to take advantage of these things when they do, or when you're using weak passwords or when these passwords end up getting exposed and you're using close variants on multiple other sites, meaning you're just changing one letter, one word, or a few letters in the password, but generally it's 80 to 90% the same word or the same characters. The other thing you're going to want to do now at a macro level, along with passwords to keep protecting yourself from cyber criminals, is if they guess that password or they know what that password is and they try to log in, there's a little thing you can turn on to make sure that they can't get any further unless they enter in some kind of a code or they verify themselves with biometrics or some other form of authentication, otherwise known as two-factor or multi-factor authentication. The process of adding a second layer of security in your login process has proven to be one of the hardest things for hackers to get around. And if you do it correctly using something like an authenticator app or some kind of other security key, and you don't send it to your email or your SMS, which have proven to be tricked or not work in a lot of cases, take my word for it, I won't go into it in too deep in this video, but using an authenticator app or some kind of security key as your two-factor method is the way I would recommend you do this. And you need to put two-factor on anything that you consider moderately important that you need to protect. So social media accounts, hackers love to take those over and use your good name to trick your friends and your family. They run all these scams through social media. Same thing with your email. If I can email out an email as you, there's a good chance I can trick your contacts, your friends, your family into thinking it's you, and I can get you to do something, click on something, send me a gift card, send me money. There's all kinds of different scams that we see go down when somebody gets access to somebody's email. So these are all things, along with all the sensitive stuff, the banking, the QuickBooks, all the places you're doing really sensitive information, obviously should all have two-factor as well. But really take inventory of what you're using out there and really decide, hey, if somebody got into that, is that something that they could take advantage of me or my friends? You know, it might not be something that you can be exploited on specifically, but somebody could use your account and your good name to exploit your friends, your family through social media. And those are the types of scams that you need to be worried about when it comes to this stuff. Same thing can happen to a business. You know, individuals, businesses, they can all be scammed as a result of all this. The other thing you can do at a very macro level is be cautious with links and attachments, whether they come in through email, through SMS, Teams, Slack, any way that you can communicate with individuals, with businesses. We see Discord chat, private messages, Signal apps, and WhatsApp apps all be taken over by cyber criminals because somebody had their phone taken over or somebody had their account taken over. And what happens is the receiver of that message thinks that this person really just sent me this. So if my mom sent me a text message, I'm going to question it, but my brothers or sisters, they might click on it right away because number one, they don't think like I do in terms of cybersecurity because they're not cybersecurity professionals, but they also increase their level of trust because this is something I got from my mom's cell phone and it's my mom. I can see it, right? So unless they know that their mom's cell phone was compromised or their mom's account was compromised ahead of time, the chances of them clicking on that and falling for the scam or falling for the hack increase significantly. So you have to not only be cautious and vigilant on your own, but your business needs to train your employees exactly how I'm training you. It's probably a good idea to share this whole entire video with your staff because I'm giving you a masterclass on all the ways you can be hacked and all the ways you can protect yourself in this video. And while it's going to end up being a long video, it's really good information and it's really good content that you can share with any business or individual that needs to be concerned with this stuff and protect themselves. So at a macro level, we're also going to mention another major protection mechanism that every business and individual should have. And we've been doing this since the beginning of computers, and that's back up your data. Before the threat of cyber criminals and ransomware and all that stuff, there used to be like World Backup Day where everybody would be like, oh, make sure you back up your pictures and all your stuff because you never know when your hard drive is going to fail. Well, hard drives don't really fail anymore, folks. It's rare that a hard drive fails anymore. I mean, I used to swap out hard drives when I first started this company. Seemed like every other day we were swapping out failed hard drives and power supplies, and that's basically what we did the most of in the early days of this business. We don't do any of that stuff anymore. And the big threat now is keeping cyber criminals away. That's what we focus on. And that's where we know the risk is to a lot of businesses. But backups have always been a thing, so nothing's changed, right? We just need to make sure that we're doing it in a responsible and methodical way, so that the day we need to use those backups to recover our system, so we can get back up and running quickly because of an adverse event. And also, if we're dealing with ransomware as that adverse event, we use our backups to not have to pay those thugs for the money that they want for exploiting our businesses and our businesses' weak security. A little bit into the micro here, but also at the macro, make sure you have firewalls and antivirus software. So talk about firewalls first. Firewalls protect your network. It's the device that goes behind like your modem or your router. So if you work from home or you have this stuff at your house, don't rely on your ISP's modem. Get a decent firewall and put it in place, and make sure the device you have has some like internet security built into it. We're way past the point where people can just plug all their devices in at home to their router from Comcast or Verizon or Cox or whatever ISP that they use and hope for the best there. While these devices do provide some level of security, they're not security devices. In other words, if somebody breaks through those or breaks into them, there's nothing really set up there to alert you that somebody could have got through something here. Where a device like a firewall with intrusion detection prevention and security features built into it, along with software on your endpoints as well. So you need to protect the network, but you need to protect computers and Windows operating systems and laptops and things like that on top of it. You kind of need these things in two places. You need firewalls and antivirus on your network, and you also need it on your computer, or what's also referred to as your endpoint or your antivirus endpoint protection software. You need to have it in both places. So make sure you keep your firewall and your antivirus software up to date, installed, so you can stay protected at both the network and the computer level. And you do this at every home and every business. And you need to make sure, if you run a business and you allow work from home, that your employees are doing this stuff. So you should have policies in place that state to your employees that they need to have internet security devices put in place on their home networks. Another big one, limit admin privileges. There's so many people out there who are logging into their computers, logging into their cloud accounts, whether it be Google. Microsoft 365 is a big one where we see users who have what's called global admin rights, and they give those rights to the account that they use every single day to do their email, to log into OneDrive, Azure, to their computer. You shouldn't be doing non-privileged functions, non-security functions. You should not be doing those with privileged accounts. So if you just need to check email, you just need to surf the web, you don't need an account that can install software. You should be prompted or blocked in some way if something tries to get installed under these accounts. Because look, if you have this protection in place, if you don't allow everything just to run, and you have to type in a privileged username and password in order to make that run, you stop about like 95% of the threats out there, because they need administrative privileges or elevated privileges in order to run. So if you're logged into your account or you log into your cloud as just a regular user when you need to work, it's a safer way to work. It's like putting on your seatbelt when you get in the car than just driving around with your windows down, the top down, and your seatbelt off. Because if you get into an accident and you run into a problem, that seatbelt is going to save your life versus ejecting you out of the car and potentially injuring you fatally. So that's what it's like when you're driving around with your computer and you have admin privileges. You're just allowing everything to happen, everything to be installed, including things like ransomware. If you need help with any of this stuff, guys, there's plenty of links down below. Check this out. And also, now's a good time to subscribe to our channel and like the video if you're staying with me. Hope you appreciate the video. If you have any questions, also drop them in the comments below. Tell us whether you like this video, you hate these kinds of videos, it's too long, you're not detailed enough. I don't know. Just give me some feedback. Positive feedback usually works better than negative feedback in my world. Negative feedback can get you banned from this channel. So appreciate the support. Last thing I'm gonna give you a tip on here at the macro level, stay educated. Make sure that you don't just have a security program that is stagnant or doesn't teach your staff and educate you as an individual on the latest threats, because quite frankly, what hackers were doing 3 years ago is completely different today. What they were doing 6 months ago is a lot different today. They're constantly evolving. They're constantly looking at what we're doing to protect your companies, and they're adapting to our security defenses. Just like if you're a fan of the NFL and you watch football football teams go at it against each week, from week to week, they adapt their schemes, they adapt their strategies and their methodologies for attacking their opponent that they're playing. They look at research, they look at how other teams played this team to determine how they're going to attack this team the week that they play them. And if there's things that they can pick up on, things that they're good at, things that they're not so good at, that's exactly what cyber criminals are doing to figure out how to attack an industry or how to attack a certain company. If there's a common piece of software that is used in an industry and that software, hackers have intel on how to hack that software, you can guarantee yourself that that industry will have a problem. Just look at something like the MOVEit breach or SolarWinds. When these software applications have widespread vulnerabilities spread throughout multiple companies, hackers pounce on them very quickly and try to take advantage of them and try to take advantage of as many companies that use that technology as possible. There's a lot of different cyber attack vectors and ways that these cyber criminals and hackers can not only exploit you, but can exploit your business, the company you work at, or the company you've built, or the company you run. Whatever your situation is, you have a role to play to protect this information. It's not IT's job. It's not somebody else's job. While IT plays a big role and factor into your cybersecurity program, a real cybersecurity program starts from the top down. There's a culture that permeates through an organization when security is done correctly. And I'm not just talking about high-fiving each other when you click the little button at the top of your Outlook to say, I spotted a fish. That's a start. That's one little piece of what organizations need to do to inform their employees of the current threats that are out there. But that's not the only thing you need to do. And nobody should feel good that because they have phishing training and simulation down, that they're not going to get hacked or they're not going to have a problem. So I hope this video gave you a full perspective on what the threats are that are out there right now in 2024 that impact businesses, that cause them to go down, and all the things you can do to start protecting yourself from those threats. I laid it all out for you in this video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Brian with Exact IT and Cybersecurity. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe, everyone.